Hello, I'm Stacy from trulymajestic.com. Today we're going to make this moss stitch blanket. We're going to start by casting on 17 stitches. The first thing we're going to do is tie a simple knot. It does not need to be a slip knot, just a simple knot, and you want the tail facing forward. Now I'm going to be grabbing my yarn from around the back and pulling it through the front of the loop, and I'm just going to be chaining 17 stitches. It's best actually if you chain one extra, 18, in case you've miscounted or you need to make some adjustments. Now you'll notice on your chain, the front of it looks like a braid or a plait, and the back of it should have big dashes down the center of the chain. This is the back of your cast on, and the braid or plait is the front of the cast on. What we're going to do next is pull one more stitch up through the end, and this is the first stitch of the next row, which is still a cast on row. Now we're going to pull our yarn through each dash or bump that's on the back side of our cast on. So there's bumps on one side and a braid on the other side. You want the bumps facing you for this, and just pull the yarn up through each one. You want the yarn loops to be big enough for you to get your hand through and sit comfortably on your arm. Not too big, not too small, and try to make them as even as you can. This whole process can be done easier if it's on the floor or on a table. Now let's just have a quick count down through all the loops to see if I have 17. And if I have 18, that's just fine. We'll just take one stitch off and just use the 17 loops. So I have 18. So we need to take this last stitch away, and we will make that little bump go away when we're finished with our blanket. Let's just get to the other side to show you. This is the back side and this is the front side. It has a nice braid, and we'll be having the braid facing us. Put your hand through the loops now, from the back of the loop to the front of the loop, and this will make sure the loops are facing the right direction. Now to start off, we're going to slip the first stitch, which means simply place it on your other arm without doing anything else to it. Then we're going to be knitting one by pulling the yarn through the back of the loop. This is called a knit stitch. Anytime you see a knit stitch, you pull your yarn through the back of the loop once you open it up towards you. So we're going to purl this one, and that means pull it through the front. You pull the yarn over the top from the front to the back. Now we're going to be doing another knit stitch from the back of the loop to the front, and then another purl stitch. So bring your yarn over the top and then pull it from the front of the loop to the back of the loop. We're going to keep doing these knits and purls all the way till we have only one stitch left on our arm. For the very last loop, we're going to hold our yarn in our hand and pull it straight through the loop. This is called KTBL, or knitting through the back loop. It's very simple. For row 2, we're going to slip the first stitch, and then we're going to do exactly what we've done before. Knit the first stitch, and then purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Exactly the same. There's no difference. You're making another identical row. This is a purl row, a purl stitch, you can see by the dash, so we're going to make another purl stitch on top of it. Every knit stitch you see, we're going to make a knit stitch on top of it. And continue this until you have only one loop on your arm. We're going to end this row identical to the last row that we did. So I'm just going to hold the yarn in my hand for the last loop and pull it straight off the end. Now we've made it to the third row. We're going to slip our first stitch, and then we're going to purl the first stitch instead of knitting it. And knit the next stitch. Purl one stitch, knit one stitch, purl one stitch, knit one stitch until you have one loop left on your arm. Then you'll knit through the back loop. That just means pull your yarn straight through the loop. Now you're going to do these in sets of 2. You have to do 2 rows exactly the same and then 2 rows opposite. So 2 rows of knit, and then 2 rows of purl, knit, purl. I'll give you the pattern and then you can do the rest of the blanket on your own. You should have a strong grasp of what you're doing by now. Here's the pattern. You slip the first stitch in all rows. Rows 1 and 2, you knit, purl, knit. Rows 3 and 4, you purl, knit, purl. And then you repeat these rows until you have enough yarn for one single row left. The last loop on every row also, you need to knit through the back loop, which means you pull the yarn straight through the loop. You should now have finished the entire blanket apart from enough yarn for one last row. And now I'm going to teach you a cast off. Like all other rows, we slip the first stitch, and wherever there's a purl underneath from the row below, we're going to purl that stitch. Wherever there's a knit, we're going to knit that stitch. So I'm going to purl this one because there's a purl below, and then I have 2 loops on my arm. I pull the back over the front and drop it off. Now we're going to do the same again. This is another purl stitch, so I'm going to purl it. Then I'm going to take the back loop over the front one and drop it off. Now you continue this way through the whole blanket. This is actually a cast off for a basket stitch blanket. So you're going to be doing a knit, purl, knit. So you'll have 1 purl, 1 knit, 1 purl, 1 knit. But the principle is the same on any blanket that you make. If you have a row of knits from the row below, you need to do all knits on top for this cast off row. If you have some knits and some purls, you need to knit the knits and purl the purls and do the cast off by dropping the back loop up, off, over the front loop until you have 1 loop left on your arm. The same as all other rows, for the last stitch that you have left on your arm, you're going to knit through the back loop, which just means pulling the yarn straight through the loop. And then we're going to do the very last cast off by dropping the back loop over the front loop, and we have 1 loop left. All of the remaining yarn, which shouldn't be too much, it should just be a tail, should come through this loop. And then you need to snug it down nice and tight, but not too tight. And then we're going to weave in the tail. Now this is from the other end, the cast on end. We had this extra lump because I casted on 1 too many stitches to show you guys that it's not a problem. We're going to unwind that now and then pass the remaining yarn through the loop that's left and snug it down. Now with this tail, we're going to weave it through the sides of the blanket. In here and there. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but just make sure your yarn isn't sticking out too much and it's blending in nicely with the blanket until you get to the very end, and then just tuck the end away. You'll want to do exactly the same as this with the tail on the other end. Now when you're finished, you should have a blanket that looks something like this. This is a moss stitch pattern which you've just made. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me on my Facebook page and ask. Also under my YouTube videos you can comment and I'll answer. Thanks for watching. Happy arm knitting from Truly Majestic.